important book about Vietnam. What should we know about his intellectual work, and what does it tell us about what kind of a national security advisor he'll be?
So this is a fascinating question because it was a great appointment. I don't know anybody in the field who isn't very happy about this appointment, because H.R. McMaster is not just considered one of the Army's premier and the military's premier intellectuals, but he's also considered a superb professional and somebody whose defining characteristics have been a willingness to tell the people above him what they should do to do the job properly. And he first came on the scene to great public acclaim with his dissertation, which became a book, which criticized the Vietnam-era military leadership for not doing that with regard to the Johnson administration and therefore letting us get bogged down in Vietnam. One can dispute whether or not his analysis of Vietnam is fully correct, but there's no question that he was telling the military brass, you need to stand up for principle and serious substance and not let your political masters screw things up. If he does that in the Trump administration, it would require a full-scale shift of course of the administration. So whether he's going to back down from what we expect him to do, or whether they're going to back down and from what they've been doing, we just don't know. Grab your popcorn. This is going to be fun to watch.
Tom, let me ask you on that specifically. So the two things I notice about McMaster is he's very tough on Russia. He's been very hawkish, but perhaps even more importantly, he came to fame in Iraq as an army officer who really believed that it was important to ally with locals, to go into the communities, not to rely on proxies, not to just bomb from afar, to really engage in this comprehensive counterinsurgency operation, which means really nation building and getting in deep. It seems to me on both issues, Russia and ISIS in that sense, he's very different from Trump's instincts. What's going to happen?
Well, part of the bizarre nature of this national security establishment, Fareed, is it's like a pickup basketball team. And it's sort of whoever just showed up on the sand lot or in the parking lot. And so you went from Flynn, who was viscerally anti-Muslim, I would say, and not to mention anti-Iran, to someone like McMaster, who really believes in close collaboration with communities on the ground, and that the most important words in national security are self and sustaining. That is, we can take over any country in the world, but if we want our gains to be self-sustaining, you have to be partnering with and amplifying forces on the ground. I think McMaster also understands some of the traditional pillars of American national security, and why, as you and Gideon alluded to earlier, the European Union has been our wingman in the world. It has been the other great center of democratic capitalism. Not only has it stabilized Europe so that we don't have to intervene there, and referee its fights, but more importantly, Fareed, when you go into the world, just a small example, who do you think pays for a lot of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank administration? It's actually the European Union. Do we want to pick up that tab? I certainly can tell you the Israelis don't want to pick up that tab. If you go to the Sahel, sub-Saharan Africa, you will see European Union aid programs all across Africa. Is Belgium going to do that alone? And so these are real pillars of American national security. They amplify our power. I think McMaster understands that very well. I think Bannon doesn't have a clue.
So, David Frum, again, what is this going to look like when you deal with Syria? I'm guessing McMaster is going to say, look, you can beat up on ISIS, but then you can't just abandon it. You'll create a power vacuum. You need some local stabilization. We need to get in there and deal with it. That is not a message that Donald Trump wants to hear. I think he's a kind of bomb and go man.
But for the next 3 months at least, the most important foreign policy fight in the United States is going to be happening not only inside this country, but inside the city I'm speaking to you from, Washington. Because it's the president is locked in this death struggle with the national security bureaucracy, which knows a lot, or thinks it, or suggests it does, that would be embarrassing to him about his ties with Russia and those of some of the people around him. And there's a race. Can Donald Trump silence those professionals? Or will they continue to bring forward the information that we've been hearing more and more that is very damaging to him? And what will his National Security Council, what will their role be in all of this? I think a lot of the administration will turn on who wins that battle, because it's very hard to imagine that we can have both the Trump presidency as we've known it and independent and honest security services as we've known them.
Natalie, what does this mean for European countries? Are they beginning to think about, kind of independent defense and foreign policy? A European friend of mine said the worst thing he thought was going to happen here was that an insecure Poland was now going to go to countries like Germany and say, can you give us some kind of guarantees? And then the Germans might start thinking about it, which will then get the French to worry about Germany freelancing. And, you would have renationalized European security policy with independent countries pursuing independent interests.
Listen, of course, the fact that General McMaster has now been given this position will be seen as something reassuring for Europeans, essentially because if you have an unpredictable, hard to decipher president, a rogue president in the White House, then you want to have sound, professional minds around him and people who are committed to the pillars of U.S. foreign policy as they've existed over the last 70 years, which matter a lot to Europe. Europe does not have an alternative to the American security umbrella. That's a fact. Europe cannot, on its own, pick up pieces of its own, military resources and suddenly set up a NATO of its own without serious American involvement. It's going to be very important for Europeans also that the new national security advisor that he does not belong to the group of people who think that Trump should make a deal with Putin over European heads and to the detriment of the interests of European nations, especially in the central and eastern part of Europe.
And that's why, Natalie, you write in The Guardian, America must lead the free world. The alternative is chaos. Thank you all. Fascinating, sobering conversation. Next on GPS, for ISIS, is there life after the caliphate? Can the physical caliphate become a virtual one, perhaps even more deadly? The answer is yes when we come back.